I don't want to get your hopes up, but it looks like the next Predator might be more than just a sock. What's going on, guys? Josh from soccerreviewsforyou.com, bringing you guys an early look at what will likely be the next generation Predator, probably to be called the Adidas Predator 20 Plus, likely due probably towards the end of the year, if not early 2020. We're still several months out from the official release for this particular boot, but as we've seen with so many different pros wearing unreleased blackouts in training, what we see in these pictures is likely to be 90% of what will actually be available to the public once this becomes a regular release. So with that in mind, I want to break down everything that we can see in these pictures and give you guys kind of my wish list based on these images of what we can hope for from the next generation Predator. So let's start with the obvious. The boots clearly have a knitted upper, likely prime knit, probably forge knit as well if they're carrying over technology from the Predator 18 and 19 Plus. The boots are also mid-cut, a very similar cut to what we see on the current models, and they're also laceless. So it doesn't look like that is a concept that Adidas is going to be dropping within the brand anytime soon. However, I think you can fully expect a lace variation of this boot when it becomes fully available. So for those of you hoping that Adidas would go back to leather uppers on the Predator series, I don't think that's going to be happening. It's possible that there could be a leather variant. I guess it's even possible that the toe forefoot area on these boots is actually made of leather. But again, I think it's very unlikely, although definitely possible that we could get a leather variant, as Adidas just recently put out the leather version of the Predator 19.1, which is actually not half bad. But yeah, probably not gonna be leather. Which brings us to what I think is the most interesting part of these images, and that's what's happening in the forefoot toe box area, where you can see these horizontal rows of what look to be kind of raised dots on the upper. We don't know what those dots are made out of. We don't know what kind of texture that they have, but if I had to guess, this looks like some kind of a striking element. So while the Predator series has historically been a series of power boots with the main focus being the rubberized striking elements, we don't have a great look at the instep of this particular unreleased version, but it doesn't look like those dots continue into where a striking element would traditionally be, which leads me to believe, and it kind of ties in with the marketing of the return of the Predator, that this will be more of a control boot than it will be a power boot. Either way, if it has any kind of grip element to the upper like the older Predators, I'll be happy because it means that the Predator will be more than just a sock. As for the dots themselves, I think it's safe to assume that this is some kind of a control slash added grip element on the ball, which is what I'm hoping for. It is entirely possible that this is just a 3D texturing, kind of what Nike did on the Nike Magista Obra 2 with its Flyknit upper and 3D texturing, which worked great, felt really good, but I kind of think that's a little bit boring, and I'm hoping for some enhanced grip. So what I think is happening here are two different possibilities. Possibility number one is actual rubber dots on the upper, kind of replicating what Adidas has done in the past with the Predator LZ and the Lethal Zone rubber elements, rubber striking elements, rubber control elements, if you will. Been a big part of the Predator series, so it would be nice to see that come back on the Predator 20. However, I think it's less likely for that to be the case based on the fact that they'd have to individually glue all of these rubber dots, which could potentially be an issue in regards to durability. Rubber is inevitably going to be a little bit more heavy than most other materials that are typically used on modern football boots these days, and the rubber will get a little bit more slippery, or at least lose some of the grip in wet weather, even though it still provides more grip than without the rubber. What I think is most likely happening here is a 3D texturing type situation like the Magista Obra, but actually more along the lines of the Flyknit Ultra, with this kind of hard glue, kind of sticky sensation in the form of horizontal strips that boot had, except on the Predator, instead of just strips, it's actual little dots. I think something like that makes the most sense for this boot because it adds the least amount of bulk and weight to the upper. It's also not going to be a concern in regards to durability. It's going to allow them to maintain the sock-like fit and comfort through that area of the foot. It's not going to take away from the flexibility of the upper, plus you're going to get the added grip, which is something that I'm very excited to try out. If it ends up feeling anything like the Flyknit Ultra upper, that's a very good thing. Although it also goes to show how much the Predator line has changed, in that the closest potential comparison to the latest generation Predator is a mercurial, which is pretty much the opposite of what you think of when you think Adidas Predator. Which brings us to the second most interesting change here, and arguably the one that's going to have the biggest impact in regards to how these boots feel versus the older version of the Predator, and that is the tooling for the base of the boot. The sole plate, the stud pattern, even the heel counter appears to be completely redone. Which is great because I really feel like the sole plate and stud pattern on the current Predator is probably the worst one on offer from the Adidas brand. It's unnecessarily bulky, it's unnecessarily heavy. Yes, they incorporated the boost element to it, but it really doesn't make for any kind of major difference in terms of comfort at all. It just adds more weight. And like I said, the stud pattern is very, very uninspired. So something new is greatly appreciated here. Now it's hard to pick out specific details because everything is blacked out and kind of difficult to see, but you can see that there is still an external heel counter that appears to be lower than the average heel counter, but a little bit bigger than what we currently have on the Predator 18 and 19 Plus. And then the sole plate, you really can't make out any details at all, but what I'm hoping for is something along the lines of the speed frame found on the X. I know that the Predator series is known for being a little bit more substantial and significant, but that's obviously not the direction that they're taking the Predator series into. So I'd rather have something that's a little bit thinner, a little bit more flexible, and ultimately just lighter in general, because they could have easily put the speed frame on the current Predator and the boot would just be better off for it. As for the stud pattern, again, it's kind of difficult to make out specific details, but you can generally see that the layout remains the same in terms of what we see across the entire Adidas brand right now, so nothing's really changing there, somewhat unsurprisingly. But it does look at the heel like you have somewhat of a bladed shape to the stud and a bladed shape to most of the studs on the boots in general, looking like they're trending towards something a little bit more aggressive, which I think is what the Predator series should be all about. They should go for something aggressive. I know it's not a speed boot, but think back to some of the classic Predators. They're known for having these very long, very sharp bladed studs, which we just didn't get on the Predator 18 or 19 Plus. So something like that with the Predator 20, again, is something I think people would be really happy about. As a whole, for me at least, I think that this is my most anticipated brand new boot from the Adidas brand over the next 6 months or so. I'm curious to see what they're going to do with the X line as well, because that's due for a full update. Probably within the next 6 to 8 months. But the Predator series is something that, yeah, it came back, but I don't think it came back in the way that it should have. And it looks like they're going to correct a lot of that with this Predator 20. If everything that I'm describing is what the final product ends up being. If that's the case, I think we're gonna have a really special pair of boots on our hands. On our feet. Anyways, guys, those are my thoughts, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. How do you think these look and what are you hoping for from the next generation Predator? If you guys enjoyed this video and perhaps want to see other boot spotting videos like this, don't forget to support this one with a like. That lets me know that you want to see more. If you have any questions regarding anything that I talked about in this video, feel free to leave that down below in the comment section as well. If you're not subscribed already, make sure you hit that subscribe button for weekly videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. You can find all my social media information linked down below in the description as well. And other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.